My heart attack, I literally came back to the screens the Monday after. I had a heart attack on a Friday.
That's
and I ended up
crazy.
in the hospital like 2 weeks later. And it was just like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? It just is
Crazy.
like, because as a day trader, if I'm looking at it both sides all the time, it's just too much. I'm going to overtrade. I'm going to screw it up. Why do I always look at it like this? It's like the best year actually in my career was in the down market. It was 2008. And that was just because it was so obvious what was happening with news. And when you're in business for yourself, I think one of the most difficult things to be able to do is to always commit to a certain amount of savings or certain things, because you don't know what year brings what. I always say to everybody, anytime you're building a strategy, I don't need a lot of things. Just tell me if it looks bullish or bearish, because I'll take care of the rest.
What's up, traders? Welcome to the Day Trading Show. My name is Austin Silver. I'm your host. Today, we sit down with Anthony Crudele. Most of you probably have seen Anthony on the podcast before. This is part 2. We're diving into a lot of different things that we didn't touch on in part 1. We talk about his podcast, what he's got going on over there. We talk about his current view on markets. We even talk about some personal finance tips, like Anthony's core beliefs as far as becoming wealthy and successful and really achieving financial freedom. So if those are the things that you're interested in, you're going to like this hour-long conversation. I want to also let you guys know I've got a link down in the description for a 3-day free trial to ASFX TV. If you want to come trade with me, James, and our team of funded traders, check out that link. Take the 3-day free trial and come trade with us. We've also got links down below for Anthony when you guys want to connect with him. But make sure you subscribe. I don't want you guys to miss any future episodes. I've got a lot of great episodes coming. So enough out of me. Enjoy the conversation with James and Anthony Crudele. Welcome back to the show, everybody. Today, we are sitting down for round 2 with Anthony Crudele. Anthony, it's good to see you, man. How are you?
Great to be back with you guys.
It's good to have you always. You're always welcome on the show, Anthony. The audience loves you. We know me and James love you, so it's going to be a good conversation. And we got James here as well in his golf shirt looking fancy. What's up, James? How you feeling?
What's up,
That
guys?
is a cool golf shirt too, James. What brand is it?
This is actually my girlfriend's cousin's brand. It's called Custom Apparel, and this is his brand, the funky golf shirt. So
starting off the episode with a free plug. I love
He's got
it.
a plug in there. I want to know when I'm getting my shirt though.
I know. Now we need shirts.
Okay, yeah, for sure. Well, this is a Springbok one, South African rugby team. We'll have to ship it over, Anthony.
That'd be sick. That'd be sick. Send 2 for us. No, but it's good to have you guys here. So today, Anthony, I was thinking about a couple of really good questions to start off the podcast. I was thinking, man, I got to make sure it's a good first question. So here is where we're going to start. You are notorious for many things, but Friday night, everybody that follows you on Twitter knows you like your Friday night juice. So tell us the number 1 recommendation for your Friday night juice. And for everybody listening, if you don't follow Anthony, that's his why.
Well, it depends on the occasion a little bit here.
Good answer.
If I go with my favorite red wine right now, it would be Fortunate Son.
Okay.
And for those red wine drinkers out there, you probably heard of something called 100 Acres.
Of course.
And that's pretty much one of the best there is. And this is their wine and Fortunate Son. And so it's not 100 Acres, but it's from the same winemaker. And so I love that. And they have a new one I just bought a case of, which I haven't tried yet. So it's Fortunate Son Diplomat. And I hear it's great. And so that is probably going to be on Friday Night Juice pretty soon.
There it is. So it's funny. We were talking today, Anthony, and I'll get your take on this. I appreciate the recommendation. So we got a golf shirt recommendation to start, everybody, and a wine recommendation. And this is the day trading show. We'll get to day trading, but this stuff is important too. So Anthony, we were talking today in the group chat, and we were saying how, some people recently, a lot of like wealthy people especially, have been quitting alcohol. It's been like a big trend. But for me, I feel like everything in moderation is the key. You ever want to be on the extremes, either drinking all day, every day, or cutting it out completely. So what has your thoughts been? Have you had a good relationship with alcohol through your trading career? Has it been something that you've picked up and put down? Just to speak on that for a second, I'm curious your thoughts.
I'm with you on the moderation thing. I think that this world today, everything is extremes, right?
Yes.
I'm vegan, I'm giving up this or I'm that. And I always looked at it like, I've tried other diets And for me, I end up feeling worse anytime I go to any sort of extreme. And I also, when it comes to like alcohol, it's like I want to enjoy my life as well. Not that you need alcohol to enjoy your life, but I like it socially. It's fun. I get together with the guys, we play cards, we drink a little bit, we get done playing golf, have, a beer, or have a couple cocktails and dinner, which we did yesterday. And so I just think it's dependent on your personality. It's interesting to hear you guys bring this up, because when I go back to the beginning of my career, I suffered from anxiety, and this was a big issue for me. So I stopped drinking alcohol entirely for probably 2-3 years. And this was from the age of 21 till probably around 23, 24.
The prime drinking years.
I didn't drink. And I mean, I don't want to say entirely, but I didn't really drink much at all. And it was because I was just starting to trade and I was suffering from anxiety. And I noticed that when I would wake up from drinking alcohol, I would have anxiety. It would just make me feel worse. And so I stayed away from it because my body it was basically rejecting it. And so from that perspective, I was like, okay, I don't need this. And then, as time went by, I've never been somebody who's a big drinker, but I do like to have cocktails and I do love my wine and I look forward to that. Like I drink my good red wine on the weekends, maybe occasionally during the week, but I look at it as, it's a time, it just, I'm sitting on the back with my wife, the dogs, whatever, or my friends. And, I enjoy
100%, 100%. And I think like you said, part of life is, we were even talking on the last episode of the podcast. James was talking about why he didn't follow his dad's footsteps and go into banking. And it was literally for the lifestyle. I mean, you have to think about what are you working for? What are you busting your ass so hard to do, whatever it is you're doing, whether it's trading or anything for, and if you enjoy cars, get a Lamborghini, you know what I mean? Like, of course, and no one can judge that. So it's like, you got to know what you like. So I totally agree. James, are you drinking now? You're still drinking, right?
Not at the moment, actually. I haven't drank anything in about a month and a bit now. The last time
even on your birthday, bro? Didn't you just have
even on my birthday, bro? Even on my birthday, I've found like such a flow state at the moment, like without drinking, it knocks me back for a couple of days in terms of recovery. I'm getting old now, Anthony. I'm 25. I'm getting old. But no, I can definitely relate to what Anthony's saying about the anxiety. Like you wake up the next day and you don't feel great and you do feel a sense of anxiety. And I just was like, I don't really need this right now to be the best version of myself. And don't get me wrong, I will definitely, when we come to London, at the end of the year, we can say that now because this will be released after we announce it. I will definitely be having some drinks with Tom and play some golf. And I love a social beer on the golf course.
So it's waves.
Yeah, it's waves. Yeah, it's waves.
Yeah, for sure. But I want to let's go into that a little bit, Anthony, if you don't mind. We could start with the anxiety, because I find that more traders struggle with anxiety than I thought. And personally, it's not something I've struggled with outside of trading. So I can't say, of course, I've had anxious moments in my trading, but I wouldn't say it's been a struggle. I've had other struggles. So could you speak on, like, do you find a lot of traders struggling with anxiety? Is it a common thing? And maybe any ideas of like what you can do to work through it?
My guess is that most traders have some form of anxiety because it wears your nervous system down. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things. I had this conversation with Denise Scholl many years back on my podcast, and I talked to her about the anxiety that would hit me later. So my anxiety would come on the weekends, or it'd come on days where I wasn't trading, where I wasn't just hyper focused on what was in front of me. It was the times where my body would kind of relax, and all of a sudden I'd be like, why do I have this anxiety coming over me? And it's because in the moments of trading, we're putting so much pressure on ourselves that we don't realize it. We're probably not breathing as much. We're not, it's just not a healthy thing to be doing in the moment, right? What we do later is what we've talked about this and balancing that out. But Austin, you're great at balancing out your life, doing this at a very young age is at a great start. I even was pretty good at it at that point in my career as well, in my early ages. But it's still overwhelming. I was broke in debt, and you're just like, it's tough to deal with, And so I think that most traders are suffering from it in some form. But I just don't think as many people want to admit it, because it's cooler not to admit it, I think.
You're totally right. I would definitely agree. James, have you ever struggled with anxiety with your trading? What's up, traders? The best way to learn how to trade is not through a trading course. I sell a course that teaches my strategies, and I'm telling you that honest advice. The best way to really learn how to trade is to watch experienced traders with proven track records navigate the live market. Now, when I got started as a trader, I was able to watch one of Wall Street's best traders live for a full day, just one day. And it made a huge impact on my trading. I still use some of the principles that he shared that day today, 6 years later. So now as I've built my reputation and my brand as a trading coach, I want to turn and give the trading community something back. We've started the Netflix for traders. It's called ASFX TV. It's now only $10 per month. It's the same price as Netflix, basically, where you can come and watch me and 3-4 other full-time traders navigate the markets live. And again, this is the best way for you to learn how to trade. You'll see us take trades. You'll be able to participate in some of them if you'd like. It's never financial advice. I have to be very clear about that. It's for entertainment purposes only, but you're going to actually see how a real full-time trader navigates the London session and New York session every day of the week. So click the link down below in the description. Maybe there's a card flying in on the screen. Take the 3-day free trial. Check it out. See if you're interested. You don't just get the live streams. You actually get to watch the recordings of any streams that you missed as well. So it's a no-brainer. For $10 a month, it's a no-brainer. So check it out. Link down below. Now back to the video.
Definitely. I've actually had a pretty similar story to Anthony, and I can relate a lot to it. That's, I think, why Anthony is sorry, Austin, you're not my favorite trader. Anthony is, you get that clear, but I think I can relate a lot to it. I definitely have, and I will agree with what Anthony says, is that you won't feel it at the desk when you're hyper focused and you're on it and you're in the zone and you focused on what you need to do and to execute to make money. It'll be on the weekends. You'll be randomly playing golf or whatever, and all of a sudden something will trigger it and you'll be thinking about it, and then you fixated on that for the rest of the day. So I can definitely relate to that. Particularly in terms when you're trading other people's money as well, which I know Anthony, from listening to the Chat with Traders podcast, did so too. So I can definitely relate to that in that sense.
I think I've turned away from the idea of managing other people's money, at least so far, because of fear of anxiety, Anthony. Like, I'm afraid that if I did that, it would stress me out. I would go gray instantly. Like, it would be wrinkles and it would be awful. Like, I wouldn't sleep. Did you feel like, have you seen with the traders that you've worked with, the people you've been around, and for your own experience, managing other people's money is almost a guarantee for more anxiety because there's more pressure? Or does that maybe make it easier for some people?
Well, I never managed anybody else's money. I borrowed money. So that's a little bit different, right? Yeah.
Little different. Yeah.
I'm still, at the time I was, not only was I broke, I was in debt trading, money that I had borrowed and I owed it. So that was a different level of pressure. But I would say, yeah, I've never really experienced, being a money manager or managing other people's money, but my friends that do it, or other traders that I do know, we've discussed this.
Yeah.
I think it's even more stressful because when I lose my money, I look at it and go, well, I lost my money. I know that I understood the risk when I clicked the buttons. You lose somebody else's money. They didn't click a button. They didn't understand the risk you took. And so I think that is a whole nother different level of stress. That's why I'm not doing it.
Right. Okay. So we're on the same page with that. Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. I want to ask you about something I saw on Twitter. You had a picture with you and the boys heading out on a jet. You might've been going to play golf. Am I correct?
Yep. We were going to play golf.
People, you're not a big flexer, Anthony, but that's a pretty sick flex to take the boys to go enjoy the weekend. Like, all of us want that. That's why we're all here in some capacity, I'm sure, for most of the guys listening. So I'm curious because, I'm not going to ask a stupid question of how do you do that? Do you live your life in order to have that balance by any core principles? Like, do you have principles that you and your wife sat down at the dinner table and you'd agree, this is how we're going to operate. This is the stuff we're going to stand for, the stuff we're not going to stand for. I'm just curious to get to know that side of you a little bit. Is that there, or is it not?
Maybe rephrase the question. I'm not sure I 100% know what you mean by what you're
pillars.
Asking.
So I'm saying, do you have in order to achieve that level of freedom and success, that people would look at that picture of you traveling with the boys and say that's freedom and success? Are there any ideas, concepts, principles that you live by, whether it be with your wife, in your trading, in your business, that have led to wealth, success, and that type of freedom? Is that a better way to ask it?
What you're saying? Yeah. I mean, So the pillars, I would say no. I don't have something that's structured.
Okay.
And, both of my wife and I are independent in our businesses. We're both self-employed, right? I'm a trader. I've got my production company. My wife's in real estate. And so when you're in business for yourself, I think one of the most difficult things to be able to do is to always commit to a certain amount of savings or certain things, because you don't know what year brings what.
Right.
And I've always just kind of lived by the philosophy of the years I'm making a lot of money, save as much as you can. The years I'm not, you could spend a little bit of money because you don't want to be, isolated and staying inside and not doing anything, because that'll only feed the negativity that you have. And so I just look at it like this: paid things down, never carry debt, live with very minimal expenses. That is one of the things that I really learned the hard way. Was when I first started to make real money, it was one of those things where I was not used to making money. And so I didn't know what to do with it. So I was very free with it. And I see a lot of young people doing this, even older people. But people, once they come into money, they just don't have a plan. They have a plan to make money, but they don't have a plan to do something with the money. And as a trader, you're finally like, well, I deserve this and I do this. And then somebody else needs money. And then you feel like you want to give them something because you feel lucky that you have the money to actually do that, when you were the one on the opposite end of that not too long ago. So I've just learned that keep my expenses really, really low, because I just don't know what's going to happen next. There was a time where I had multiple homes, a bunch of cars, and, I was leasing boats and, just doing all sorts of things. And now I've kind of just reined that in, and, I live very lean, we'll call it. And I'll be able to go and, if we want to go and use the jet, we'll do that. If we want to be able to go and do something that we feel makes sense, and I've also learned this from a lot of my older friends that have a lot more money than I do. I look at them and say, how are they living their lives? And that's the way that they do it. It goes back to kind of like the alcohol thing, right? I mean, do it when it makes sense, or when you like, look at this, we use, we'll use a private jet, maybe, less than a handful of times a year between the group that we hang out with, because we're just going to do something for that specific moment. And so it's not like something we go and we're like, we're spending a lot of money on. There's a lot of guys in there as well that doing it. And so I just always look at it and say, just know where you're at, recognize where you're really at. Can you do this? Does it make sense to do this? I set certain goals where it's like, okay, you make some money, you do something, you keep spending or you keep saving, and then you could spend something to give yourself some reward. I'm a big believer of that, because when you're independent, especially as an independent trader or business owner or investor, however you want to look at it, there's nobody ever going, hey, Anthony, great job. You never get that feel of accomplishment, right? Because, not that we necessarily need it, but you're going to go through times in your career where you're going to be like, man, I feel like I'm doing well, I'm doing good. And you just, you're a little burned out, and you do need that little bit of a reward. It keeps you in the understanding of why you're actually doing it. And so I know we kind of went around that, but the pillars to me is just, when I'm making, I'm saving. When I'm losing, I'm spending a little, just to make sure that my mind stays right and understands why I also need to protect the downside, so I can do that. It's a psychological thing I do.
You were, back and forth on answering that question. That was a great answer. That really was. There are definitely principles. I mean, a lot of people don't operate on debt-free anymore. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people operate on, no, get leverage, get debt, whether it's through real estate or loans or line of credit. A lot of people operate like that. So you're preaching the opposite, which is the way that I was raised. It's the way that I live now. So I think it's good advice for all young traders to hear. Right, James?
I really, really like that, because it's something that I've actually been speaking to my dad, and my dad's an accountant, my future fiance or wife's to be her dad's also an accountant, and they go the opposite way. But I think that I really resonate with what Anthony said there a lot.
Think about it this way.
Yeah, go ahead, Anthony.
If I had to start over tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
And I had nothing and I had debt, I'd be in trouble, right? If I lost a bunch of money in the market or something happened, and then all of a sudden I have debt, I'm screwed. Yeah. If I lose a bunch of money and I don't have debt, no matter what, the dollar I make the next day is a dollar in the positive way. Right. And because I've had to go back so many times to that point, that you just say to yourself, look at, debt is the number one enemy you have. It's also because in the back of your mind, it's always like, well, I've got to pay this or I've got to do that. I get a bill, I'm paying it the minute I get it, and that's just the way I operate, because I don't want to carry that debt, because to me, subconsciously, it's always there. And then you think I have to do this or I have to do that. So therefore I like to pay for things. I mean, of course, some things you need finance for. I'm not saying that I wait to buy everything, whether it's cars or homes, it just depends. But you want the things that you can pay for to pay for, because you move on immediately afterwards.
Great advice. It's great advice. Yeah. I think it is the opposite of, like I said, what is going on a lot right now. So it's just really good to hear that. So we could transition, I think, away from the personal finance, but that was really, really well said, Anthony. I appreciate you sharing that. And, like the jet thing is just, I think, the cherry on top. It's the stuff underneath that you shared that is the real meat for the guys that are listening, especially the young guys. Would you recommend that traders, like who would you go back in time and build on the dream team? Would you have gotten an accountant sooner, a financial advisor? Who did you not set up for yourself that you should have done? A life insurance stuff? Like, what would you, if you could, be specific? I'm curious.
Because I came from the floor and I had a lot of mentors that kind of told me some things that I needed to have done. Obviously, when you go to pay your taxes as an independent futures trader, you needed to know the laws right away. So immediately you have to get an accountant. I think if you're an independent trader, an accountant is like the first thing you have to have, because that to me is, you understand, once again, really the situation, right? I mean, and nobody wants to get in trouble with the IRS. And it's just one of those things where no matter who you are, they're coming for you. So you've got to make sure that that's like the first check box. But if I were to go back and say, what would I do in terms of trying to build the future, it wouldn't necessarily be that I needed a financial advisor or all these other people, because I talked to a lot of them when I started to make money, and I would say it was helpful, but it was just things that you already know, right? Like you guys, we already
that's
know.
That's why I wanted to know your opinion on it, because it's like, I used to be in that field. That's where I started. It was in life insurance. So I was around those guys, but like, what do they know more than we know? So as a trader that's starting to make money, would you have gone a different route because you already had that knowledge and not needed that? Would there have been something else?
Well, I go back to what would I have done to build a better future where I could be better off now. And I think the one thing that I would have done is I would have started to move some money earlier into assets that would be paying me now. And I didn't do that, right? I was always fixated on, well, I can buy this stock, I can get out of this stock at any point in time. I can, or I was just, I was basically always trading flat, right? Buying some stocks, obviously day trading futures. That's what I did. And everything I did was whatever I bought it and sold it for, immediate response. That's where I'm at. I didn't have anything that was built in to pay me later, right? And forget about, I'm not talking about just putting money into your IRAs and all that stuff, because that stuff is obviously important. I think that every trader should open up an IRA. And even if you're barely making money, put something in there, because it just builds a good habit. And that's a starting point. But trying to find things that'll pay you later. I mean, a lot of the friends that I have now that I've met down here in Florida, and a lot of guys that are retired, they're all getting paid still on a lot of their investments, right? And you look at us as traders, it's like, when I stop, what's going to pay me?
The wheel stops. And so what? Annuities, so Anthony? Is that what you're saying? What type
of not annuities. I would say either whether it's businesses. I actually did invest in a few businesses later. I've gotten out of some of those now. That's why I'm doing my production business, but I'm also, I think maybe some real estate plays, some things like that, looking for other ways to not be totally fixated on your income solely as a trader. And obviously if you're doing well, that's great. And you would think that it's going to last forever, and you hope it does. But the reality is you're going to have bumps to the road, and you're also going to get to a point where you may wake up and not want to do this for months at a time, or years even. Who knows? Who knows what happens to you? So I think that what's different from this and like corporate structure is they're going to be issued stocks. There's going to be, like, my brothers work for, one brother's a fireman, other brother's an electrician. They have pensions. They have something that when they're done, they get paid. We don't. And so I think that finding things like that, for me, it's now some businesses that I'm looking at, building my own business and other things. It's funny. I put a tweet out the other day. I think longer term now as a trader than I did 20 years ago. And it's because now I starting to realize, okay, man, listen, you've got to start putting building blocks in other places. You can't just be solely fixated on day trading the E-Mini S&P, because there's a lot of days I wake up and I'm like, I just don't want to do this right now.
Yeah. And that's great advice, especially because I think a lot of traders are like, and the young guys on social media, why would I need a retirement account? I'll just trade till I'm dead. It's like, that's not how it's going to work. Wait, I think, I just went through an interesting couple of months with my family, and like when stuff in life happens, like the pot gets stirred up, you fall off the wheel, you start questioning things different. Like I definitely was knocked back my trading. I didn't trade at all in July because I felt like I was off my game dealing with my dad and everything. So like you just have to deal with some of those road bumps, and you'll realize, like you just said, you might not want to do this as much. It might come in waves, and you have to be positioned to still be bringing in cash flow. That's what you need at the end of the day.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
good advice.
Never know what curveball life's going to throw at you.
No, especially not.
Right now.
So, and that's a great transition into what I want to talk about next. I want to talk about markets right now, if we can, and then let's talk about your podcast and your show after that. Is that cool?
Sure.
Cool. So you saw Michael Burry's thing, I'm sure, recently about him being short the market, and everybody on Twitter freaking out saying, all right, since Michael Burry's short, we can short everything. Can you kind of give us a take on, we had a 50% ish run up this year since we spoke last in NASDAQ. Any thoughts on maybe where we go and what implications the Fed and interest rates kind of have in markets going forward? Because I know you're not super fundamentally driven. You're a technical guy at heart, like we are. But what are your thoughts overall on, the run up, and now as we're starting to come down, what do you see coming in the next couple of months?
Of course, it'll be technically driven until something on the macro side changes, right? And so that's where the Fed comes into play. So, when you look at where we were with the Fed, you go back 3 months ago, they were looking at rates to be cut by 100 to 150 basis points by the end of the year. Now it looks like we're going to be exactly where we are right now. And here, August, September, we're probably going to be in the same place in January, February. And who knows, that could change. And so if that does change, that changes the environment, right? And so if the bond market and everything starts to price in that there's, a shitstorm coming, well, it changes sentiment, and it's going to change what happens. I mean, right now you've got people with such lofty gains. If they've been long, or even if they started getting in long, I mean, only a few months ago, they're still okay. And so I look at these types of markets and say, it's not necessarily something that we've seen in the past, because I do think it's always different. Number one, it's never really the same. And to say people keep talking about a lot of events that might be similar, that might, have the same effect or impact as last time. And I always say, yeah, that's very possible. And I always look at those things with an open mind, but I'm also someone that is very price driven. And if the situation changes, you'll recognize it as it happens. I think that my mind always stays focused on, like, what is the current situation? And the current situation, to me, to tell you exactly what I'm looking to do, is I'm going to continue to look to buy stocks for my longer term portfolio on any sort of big breaks. I still want to be more biased alongside an S&P and NASDAQ in my day trading, and I'm talking big picture, unless something radically changes, technically, or followed by macro, or vice versa, macro then technical. And just because these markets aren't made to go down, and so when I look at S&P and NASDAQ, it's people want to fight it. Man, that's a hard trade. I'm so never hard. Fighting. It's such a hard trade. I mean, it's just, why do I always look at it like this. It's like the best year actually in my career was in the down market. It was 2008. And that was just because it was so obvious what was happening with news. And it was just one of those things where every day we came in and there was just a ton of sellers.
Right.
That was a credit crisis. That was an event. I mean, those years are so rare. I mean, even COVID, look how fast that happened. The shorts made money for periods of time. I don't even know how long it was. Was it 3 weeks, 4, 5 months? I mean, maybe it was that long.
I mean, when you look at the COVID crash, it was fast.
It was fast. And then the rest of the time it's made to the upside. So I always say, in order for me to be really bearish, it's got to be macro and technical. And even if you're a day trader, you're going to trade both sides. Lately, I've been trading a little bit short. I was actually long puts not too long ago, and just keep kind of rotating out of them. And I like to buy options sometimes because it helps me be small and be able to know that I already kind of paid for my trade. And so if I want to have a little bias, I can go to the options market. And even with those positions, I was pretty much dead right didn't make a ton of money, right? I made so much more money on the upswing, long some of the stocks I've been long, and, you know, catching some really good runners in the S&P or NASDAQ in futures. And so I just always look at it and say, you've got to be very present with what it is, and try not to be too aggressive in fighting something that's just not there yet. And if it does present itself, then I'm all open. I'm open for it. But right now, why do I want to be super bearish? I mean, for what?
Especially if rates are not going higher. If we're pausing and then coming down, that's going to be probably more bullish than bearish. Lower rates are good for everybody, you know. So you made a couple of good points there. Did you want to say something, James, before I keep going?
No, I'm good. I'm good. This is your guys' macro.
Well, I didn't know if you had a question. I thought I heard you. No, and James, with the Forex stuff, James is just out to lunch. So, Anthony, that's a great answer. Did you ever run any statistical back tests on the directional bias? How likely is it that we close bullish versus bearish? Do you know any stats about that stuff?
Not offhand. No, I'm sure I've run some stats on some things over the years, but I just know from my trading over the years, I mean, majority of the years are bull markets. I mean,
bear markets never last. I have a stat for you. So Tom, one of the guys we work with, you probably have seen Tom on social and everything. He's the British guy. Tom figured out over the last 1,000 daily closes on SPY, we had a 54 point something chance of it closing bullish. So even right there, 4-point-something% edge to the upside backs up what you're saying. That includes, of course, indecisive days. And we also found, listen to this, if we don't take out the previous day's low, there's like an 80 to 85% chance that we close bullish that day. Isn't that crazy?
It is. And it's not surprising.
No, because if you hold the previous day's low, you're seeing buying strength. Just get long, just stay long biased.
I mean, there's just so many more people looking to get long. So by the mere amount of bodies looking for it, you know, and that's why shorting can be really good as well, because when it doesn't work, you can have sharp moves. And that's why I like futures, because when that does happen, you can make a lot of money short. But once again, you've got to be, I've always looked at it, you've got to be pickier about your shorts, especially in a bull market. In a bear market or a bull market, you could not be picky about longs in a bull, not picky about shorts in a bear. But in a bull market, you've really got to be picky about your shorts. I don't care what anybody says. This is a bull market. And by some measures, people will say, well, it's not technically a bull market because it didn't make a new high yet. And maybe it doesn't. But for now, it's bullish.
Right.
I don't know what else to say about it.
I don't understand how at this point, like NASDAQ could be up double digits all year, like 8 months of rise, and you're going to argue that it's not a bull market. Right.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, James?
I wanted to ask Anthony. So I love that what you just said now, because you got the saying that the big, small are not at all, right? And that's something that I like applying to my trading too. But with regards to your trading, Anthony, are you trading, just for more clarity, are you trading more on what time frame are you trading on? How long are you holding your trades? Or how are you rotating in and out of positions? Is it on a swing type of level, you know, over multiple days, or is it in and out within the intraday basis?
So for this, there's 3 accounts that I'm trading, right? And so my longer term account, I'm always rotating in and out of stocks. You can call it trading. It's more investing. My stops are wide, but I'm managing it. So I look at that, and that's a stock-based portfolio where I look at, like, I just bought NVIDIA the other day when it was just above 400. I'm like, you know what? I finally can get in this thing again, you know, and I didn't rotate out of it yet, but you know, I just bought some Rivian and I bought some other stocks, right? And so I buy those and I'll rotate out of them. And so that's one aspect. And I always look at that's one pile of money, right? Then I have a swing account where I'll swing stocks and futures, and they're different accounts because it's futures in one swing. So you have that, and I'll look at, there's certain times where I want to be in certain stocks for a swing position versus actually trying to swing the futures, because I want to buy strength and strong markets. And the only way to buy that is to buy the one that's outperforming, right? And so, like, earlier in the year, I was long Tesla versus being long NASDAQ. When that trade died and I saw the rest of the market, and I didn't catch NVIDIA or a lot of these other ones, you know, I'll go back to the futures for some swing positions. And so it's dependent. If I see a stock that I like in trend that I think will outperform, then for me, I like to go to that stock Because as we all know, there's usually a handful of stocks that are moving the markets. Oil markets is another example. A lot of times I'll think that, look, at oil might be getting ready to rally. Do I want to buy energy stocks or do I want to be long oil? And right, sometimes I look at the oil trade and I go, this is just a harder trade to be in, so I'll be long oil stocks, or it's vice versa. And that's why I think you got to be able to trade futures. And if you can, trade stocks as well because of that. And then in the short term, it's just, I wake up every day and I look to see what the day is. And if the day makes sense for me to day trade, I do it. If it doesn't, I don't. And I'm to the point in my career where I don't feel pressure to have to day trade a lot. My problem is I love it. And a lot of times it's going to get me in trouble more than it's going to do well for me. But I will day trade, and I try to be really, really, patient about that. But when it gets a little busy, I'm in there, dipping my toe in, mostly E-Mini S&P, some NASDAQ, and then crude oil and maybe a little bit of gold here and there. And that's just a totally different, obviously structure. And they're all similar in execution in the sense of using the same indicators to help guide me, but I just take them down to different time frames. And on the shorter term one, of course, I've just got a lot more going on there. I'm using order flow and other things like that. But to me, day trading there's just not as many days as I would like for the opportunities to be there. And it's, when you wake up every day and you're looking for something, just not as much for me and the way I like to be these days as it used to be.
Yeah,
I love that answer.
Yeah. There's something. So Austin and I use indicators, and I've tried to use your beacon indicator, Anthony. You're going to have to give us a tutorial because it seems a bit tricky. So you're going to have to give us a tutorial.
Is that
so? Yeah. Well, what's beacon? So beacon is Bollinger Bands, 20 period, 3 standard deviation.
Okay. And
I primarily use them on a 3-minute chart, a 60-minute chart, and a daily chart. I'll even use them on a 1 minute. We got to be really kind of busy for that to happen. But what I look for is every time the Bollinger Band's mouth is open and we're expanding outside of the previous peak of a Bollinger Band, and that tells me that we're going to expand in the range. And once that Bollinger Band starts to revert back in, that's a mean reversion trade. And so I have a line that'll tell me, long or short to really my neutral. And I look for really, it's a mean reversion indicator. But then I'll look at it even more wider on a daily. So that's how I would look at it on a 3-minute or a 60-minute. On a daily, it really helps me get the bigger picture to understand where are we. And I've talked about this in some of my shows, like in the quadrants, because most people will look at the market and say, where are we from this point in the market to this point in the market? And, that's always up for, there's a lot of randomness that could come into that. I might pick this point, you might pick this point, and he might pick this point. And we say, well, I want to go from here and what have you. And so you're not getting, I think, the real scope of what's happening in the market. So what I like to do is on a daily chart, I look at the Bollinger Bands, and wherever the peak is that we're currently in, from one peak to the bottom to one peak to the top, wherever that is, that's what I consider boxed out and what the current volatility is. And so instead of looking at the market just in price and saying we came from here to there and here we are now, I look at the market boxed out in Bollinger Bands and I say, look, if we're in the middle of the Bollinger Bands, between the peak high and the peak low, going to be choppy. If we're towards the bottom part of that peak and those Bollinger Bands are still pointing in on a daily, most likely mean reversion back to the middle and vice versa from the top. And there's a lot of obviously context and nuance that goes into that, but it helps me understand where we are currently in the market.
I followed that 100%. So is the mean reversion trade your most common day trade?
Well, is it my most common day trade?
Is that like the play you'll look for the most? Is that like when you show up to trade, tomorrow morning and you see that setting up, is that what you're going to be? Is that your go-to?
So here's what I would say. It's a trade that I do a lot. It's not the one I do the most.
Okay.
The one I do the most is more going to be with an order flow VWAP. And I've been doing some things lately. I've been tweaking it a lot more. And what I'm looking at is order flow VWAP from the open, regular trading hours only, and using standard deviation lines. And I try to stay more directional with that type of trade versus the mean reversion trade is I need some I need some confirmation, and it's a scalp against trend. I don't always love
Yep.
that unless it's a mean reversion trade within the trend of the day and the primary trend. Then that's something different. Then I would obviously want to take that.
Yep.
But
I follow you 100% on the,
you know what I mean?
100%, because I just started playing with VWAP and from start of day, and I'm looking at the same exact thing you are with. I was doing a multiplier on the band to give me a half of I think I used a half multiplier just to widen the VWAP, so I could create a little range to say I'm looking for entries near the VWAP as close as I can. Oh, this one's outside the range; it's too far. But my trades are more not mean reversion. I'm not going to trade back to the anchored VWAP as much. I'm going to trade with it. If I'm underneath it, I'm selling. If I'm above it, I'm buying. Yep. So I was going to ask you next, what do you thought about
the VWAP? If you're below the volume weighted average price for the day, the trend day is down. There's certain things I'll put into it. And
it's so simple, isn't it? It's crazy.
It just helps me. I always say to everybody, anytime you're building a strategy, I don't need a lot of things. Just tell me if it looks bullish or bearish, because I'll take care of the rest. Right. I'll find a good place to put a stop, and I'll look for a target. I'll do my homework there. I just want to know, is the day bullish or bearish? Because as a day trader, if I'm looking at it both sides all the time, it's just too much. I'm going to overtrade. I'm going to screw it up. It's just the way it's going to be. So if I see a day set up, and I'll start, top down, right? Below the 5-day moving average, below my neutral on the daily. Okay, it's a little bearish right now. Here's big picture support. We're below the VWAP on the opening ranges, basically the high, delta's negative. They're selling, look to sell a rally. That's it. I mean, it sounds like a lot, but it's like they're all saying the same thing. So I'm going to
exactly. Right. Yeah. What do you think of VWAP? Do you think that this is like, is it as, I don't want to say it's like the holy grail, but it's like one of the best indicators that I've found, because it's not an EMA where it's constantly gathering price and moving. It's slightly different. It kind of acts like an EMA, but it seems to be just so accurate with telling me, okay, we should be looking for longs. Okay, we should be looking for shorts. It's crazy.
Well, because most people are looking at just price, or they're looking at just volume, or most people are looking at, momentum indicators or some sort of, indication,
MACD, something like that. Yep.
All right. And so what the VWAP does, and why I think it seems like it's so accurate, is because the simplicity in, if we're above the volume weighted average price or we're below the volume weighted average price, okay, it's in its own right a very simple way of thinking, right? A moving average is just off price. It doesn't know what happened in the bar.
Right.
VWAP does. Yep. And so it tells you, and to me, more accurately, what the volume and the average price is doing together. And so if you're below it, it tells you something. It's a good indication because it's multiple things. It's not just one real indication. It's volume and price. And if you're above it, the same thing. And if it's trading around it, that in its own right is a lot of information, because are we just building a bell curve around it? And, you're stuck in the middle. A lot of my entries are not necessarily going to come outside of the VWAP. They'll come near the VWAP. So like when we come back in a retrace, I'll look to see, what's happening there. And do I want to stay with it? And I'll start to add or get in as we're nearing and testing based upon what some things are happening. And so anything away from the VWAP, I use standard deviations for, because how far away can we get away from a VWAP? I use 1, 2, and 3 standard deviations, because if that's the volume weighted average price for the day, a 3 standard deviation move away from a VWAP is a big move. How much do you want?
Right.
I mean, smarten up, dude. You know what I mean? Like either trail 100%. A stop or cover it. I mean,
100%. How come you said regular business hours? Are you not looking at pre and post market when SPY moves pre and post? How come? Do you have a specific reason?
Because I just, when I'm trading S&P, I want to see what they're doing from the open on, because that's when the orders that have to be done are getting done. And what I mean by that is, if you're long a bunch of stock or short a bunch of stock, you go to the futures market. That's what they're originally created for, is hedge your portfolios. So when you look at futures order flow, the reason why the opens and the closes are so much of the volume, the highest volume bars, is because that's when people have to do something. And it's also when people want to do something. And so you get the greatest test of price in that time frame. Think about this. You guys watch fighting, I know that. In the first few let's just say let's James this. And when you get into like a rugby match, or when you get into, you watch these fights, when is the most intense moment? Like it is right on the open, right?
Yep.
And is that the most likelihood of like when everybody comes out full adrenaline and they're really going at you with the intent of what they want to do, right? And so it's kind of like it's the most intense moment. And so when you look at it from a trading perspective, that tells you a lot about what's potentially going to happen for the day. Are the flows in? Are the flows out? How much did we move in that time frame? Was there balance? Then from there, you see with a VWAP from that point, is market performing above or below that volume weighted average price, or above or below? I look at that 3-minute range. And if it's building above and the VWAP's going up, it could be a trend up day. If it's going down with volume down, it could be a trend down day. So from there, I don't want to know what the overnight buildup was. And I know that the overnight, some people love it. I don't, but I don't want that to skew my initial open. I want to see it in as pure and raw as it is, because I want to know what the market was able to do when that highest intensity came in.
When the real test comes in. No, it's smart that way. That makes a lot of sense. I'm looking for this picture, Anthony, because I saw this graphic that was explained. I can't find. Oh, I got it. I'll send it to you on Twitter. It was this graphic from Steve Burns, and he said stocks work best at night. It's this graph that basically just shows overnight returns since 1995 outpacing intraday returns. Have you ever heard of this?
So that's buying on the close.
Yep.
And selling on the open the next day.
Correct.
Well, because this goes back to kind of feeds into what we've talked about with, the bullish versus the bear case. Shorts always have weaker hands. I mean, always. It's just, and they're always going to be driving price up a lot easier than longs are going to be driving price down, until a lot of longs are in trouble. And then you see, a bloodbath, and,
sure.
and that happens. And so that it does not surprise me. I've seen that.
Yeah. And how accurate is that? I don't know. I need some actual source to this, like to show the data, but I think would it be maybe possibly the fact that there's less news overnight other than during earnings season. And maybe you're just getting that, like, because when I'm trading SPX, US 500, I'm looking at it, the pre-market, the 9:30 open, and I'm looking at it from 4 o'clock on. Like, it's a nonstop market when you look at it on a chart like that. And you'll see sometimes, like, once you get past 12, 1 o'clock on certain days, if there's no news, trend just slowly continues. And I wonder if that would continue then into the overnight. And that's why we sometimes see that potential outcome,
Yeah. I mean, there's just a lot of variables there. I just think that, you've got, I wouldn't even know where to gauge why that happens, except the mere fact. My mind immediately goes to shorts have weak hands. You're short overnight. What are you hoping for? I mean, what are you really pinning that against? I mean, in a weak market, obviously they'll love to bleed them out overnight. But you've got to once again have news. Otherwise they don't tend to hold as much, and shorts are always going to be getting squeezed easier. And so that's the way I look at it.
Yeah. I love that. Were you going to say something, James, before I pulled up that graphic?
Yeah, so I wanted to, I like what Anthony said, and I know you've tweeted about this before, about saying picking one side of the market. Some of your trading friends that have shorted in a bull market and made, millions. And then obviously some guys buying in a bear market, but you got to pick one side. And I think that's what I've implemented that in my trading. So I personally use on a 50-minute time frame, the 50-minute 200 exponential moving average. If we above it, I'm only looking for buys. And if we below it, we're only looking for shorts. And it goes to what you just said about give me a direction for the day, I'll sort out the rest. How many times do you see traders and yourself, because I know I've done this plenty of times, where you'll come in with a bias, you want to be buying a certain asset or currency pair, and you'll do the complete opposite because you thought it was reversing. So I think that, maybe speak on that and how that's managed to keep you in the game.
I look at it like this: is once I figure out the direction I want to be in, it just comes down to me. It comes down to execution. And so I like any tool or anything that just gives you long or short. I mean, that's really all a trader should ever really need to know, because from that point, you should be able to know where that trade is no longer valid, because it's either a bar close below it, or it's one standard deviation below it, or whatever it is that you want to put in into the context of that situation, that strategy. That's all you now need to know, because now the winner takes care of itself. And so for me, I just think that most traders, the reason why they get turned around is because you go from planning to reacting instead of planning and executing. And that's the mistake they make. I make it, you make it, we all do, because all of a sudden, a day comes in. Maybe today some people wanted to buy them. They came in, market opens, it rallies, and it breaks the rest of the day. And you're like, what happened? And you keep buying that, and you feel like that's the way you want to make your money back as well, because you weren't able to adjust to it. It's versus the plan, long or short, look at what happened. If it didn't work, you're out, or it's a reverse, which is a whole nother, I guess, kind of conversation. I mean, how often am I reversing in a day? Not often.
Because you picked your side. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Can I ask, Anthony, when you have gone through so many years of trading, how have you bounced back from periods of setback? A question kind of stepping back from the technicals. When something's happened in your life, you lose a loved one, something, whatever, life, bro, whatever it is. How have you handled that in your trading? Do you take time off? Do you do something specific? Like, do you have any advice for guys that are maybe going through the first big, knock off the horse?
Well, if it's a personal issue, I always think time off is, needed. You can't come back to the screens with anything that's in the back of your mind. And some people will say, well, I need to be there because, it will take my mind off it, or they'll come up with some excuses like, this is where, I'm comfortable, I want to be there. But what you don't realize is that subconsciously you're not really there. And so I've tried to fight my way through a lot of things where I've come back, and, I've had a lot of setbacks for a lot of things, and I just always looked at the personal ones. It's like, you just got to remove yourself from the screen. I mean, my heart attack, I literally came back to the screens the Monday after I had a heart attack on a Friday.
That's crazy.
I ended up in the hospital like 2 weeks later. And it was just like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? It just is crazy. Like, because my mind was in this place where you think that, will I ever be able to come back to that? Or do I need to go back and make something happen right now to prove that I still can be here? Or there's something resonating with you in you as a competitor to say, I'm going to come back from this right now. I'm going to fix this.
Your ego.
Yes. And so I always look at it as, any sort of setback, it can never hurt to take a little time off. But I also would say that, if you're trading well, and let's just say you're not making money, is that a setback? Should you step away? To me, that's a unique situation too. And I want to talk about that, because I think that you get a lot of people that are probably struggling, but they're doing the right things and they're not making money. So what do you do, right? And I think what I say is, you want to stay then, and you just want to start trading really small and see if what you're doing is really working, or is it really you? Because I have found that, and this recently, I still do this. I recently had to step back and do this. I was trading too big, and I had all the kind of the right ideas. I felt like I was trading so good, and it was like I made some good money, and then I just like all of a sudden, it's just like numbingly, it was gone. I gave it all back, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? I'm like, is it me? Like, what's going on here? And I got a little touchy with, too big and too soon, puking them, in that kind of situation. Because a lot of times I'll trade, if I trade in one direction, a lot of times I'm just trading across the board, right? And so I'm long here, I'm doing this, I'm rotating in and out of an intraday position, I'm buying stocks, there's could be a lot of things happening. And so when I do well, I'll do really well. And then all of a sudden, sometimes you'll just unravel doing the same thing. And you're like, how does this happen? And you're like numb to it.
Yeah.
And I go back to, if I was trading small, how would I have done? And it's funny, not too long ago, I went back and I'm sitting there and I'm just sitting there trading 1 to 3 lot micros, S&Ps, which is nothing. And I'm just like, what are you doing, man? And I make money every time. And I'm like, dude, there you go, man. You're an idiot. You trade too big again. You want too much, or you're trying to force too much, or your mind is just wrapped around winning, and it's not wrapped around defending when you should. You're just aggressive. And that's what happens when I'm making money, because that's the way I think. And then
on the high horse,
all of a sudden, you're just like, I gave it all back. Like, what happened, dude?
Right. No, it's very well said.
I want to read a tweet. This is probably one of my favorite tweets from Anthony. I'm glad that Austin brought this up. So if I could just read it out, and then I want to get your thoughts on this, Anthony, because I think it's such a good topic. So you tweeted, yeah, when I was 20 years old, I began trading and thought I knew it all. I was going to be rich from trading. I ended up broken in debt over the next 3 years. By the time I was 30, I'd bought multiple seats at CME, had $1 million a year, and thought, that is it. I know what I'm doing now. I've got this figured out. Soon after, I had one of my worst runs and a heart attack at 36. I'm now in my 40s and I remain a student every single day. My ego for thinking I know everything is gone, and I've never been in more control of my decision making. This business takes time. If you can slow things down and think long term, your short term results will get better. The reason why I love that is because I think, I resonate so much with that, not on a scale like that, but just in terms of what separated you to be able to still be trading right now today, and still trading successfully compared to someone that might have just quit and walked away.
You had every reason to quit, Anthony. I feel like.
Yeah. That must have been on a Friday night juice night, man.
That definitely. I don't know. But it ties into everything you've said so far today too. So it really it's true.
It goes back to my pin tweet, really. And it's like, I don't see myself as anything else, right? And I think
after blowing out accounts, borrowing dollars to come back, and people ask me, why don't you just quit? I told them I can't quit because I only saw myself as one thing, that it was a trader. That one.
Yeah. And I love this life. I love it. I love markets. They're new and fresh every day. I'm constantly challenged. I could make as much as I want. I could lose as much as I want. And so there's something there that keeps me in the way that I am as a person, constantly interested and intrigued at doing well at, right? And when I'm not good, the feedback's immediate, and when I'm good, the feedback's immediate. And I like writing my own future. It's why I've always been in business for myself. And so I look at it like this is, there's so much that happened to me in my life. It's like, I think about from the heart attack aspect of it, I think physically, I just hit a wall with how much I could withstand, and that's why I'm not nearly as active as a day trader as I once was, and it's not that number one, I'm not trading as big. I'm not risking as much at times. Sometimes I'm risking as much or more, but it's rare. And that's a testament to me, understanding who I really am as a person. I can't come in and be, Mr. Big swinger every day. It's just, my body really couldn't handle it anymore. And I know it sounds weird, but you're like, how's that possible? Right. And you're like, it's so intense when you're trying to scalp for big money for ticks, and Joseph said against you, it's your way, it's against you. You're just like, it's just, how much can you handle? And so I think what I had to do is I had to look in the mirror and say, once again, kind of back to what I said, building blocks for the future. What happens, dude, if something really does bad happen to you? What if you would have, not been able to come back, or what if you would have died? I mean, my wife, I'm leaving her. It's just as like, I thought about so many things, and I said, look, if you want to be able to do this and function at a healthy level, figure it out, man. Figure it out. Trade smarter during the day. You don't need to be Mr. Big Swinger all the time, trading size constantly. At some point, you got to realize, look, you're just not you anymore. Allocate to the other stuff. So, you know what I mean? I started trading stocks. I started learning how to become a swing trader. It took me so long. And now I kind of hybrid in between the two. And I know the balance. It's like right now I've been able to day trade around a small core position, not getting too big with a little bit of options on or something like that. And I'm able to stay within myself. The minute I start getting aggressive, I talk about it. Numbingly, I give my money back. And so I was able to adapt because I wanted to adapt. A lot of my friends that left the business, some of my friends left that made a shit ton of money and they could leave. And they're just like, you know what? I'm done. I get it. Right. Good for them. Other of my friends made some good money, but they just couldn't adapt. They didn't want to. And they just looked at the market and said, I'm done. I mean, some guys can just do that and they moved on to doing other things. And other people stayed, didn't adapt, and lost all their money, probably more of the latter. And so you always have to look, because I've seen so many different people end this business in many different ways. Like, how do you want to end it, man? And it's like, would you rather be a small trader and exist, or continue to think you're a super big trader and physically hurt yourself or go broke. I mean, the choice is always ours in this business. What do you want to do? And I've always said, look, figure it out, man. If you want to do it, trade smaller, allocate doing different things. And, and the thing is, as you make money as a trader, you've got to realize that I go back to when you're making money, save money, start doing things that will pay you. Because then all of a sudden, when you at a moment like I had, you need that buffer time to figure it out, and so that's my story. I mean, and there's so much in between, like, then do I really want to do this? And then you want to quit again. And then you're like, no, I do love it. I mean, it's not like, it's not linear.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. But that was very well said too, Anthony. So as we're coming to the end, Anthony, I want to be courteous. Do you have a little more time to give us?
Sure.
Cool. Let's just talk about the podcast, if you don't mind. Tell us about what you got going on over there, because before we started the recording, you mentioned you've got a couple of different hosts running a couple of different shows. You got an assistant coordinating. So catch everybody up, because I think last time we talked, it wasn't exactly that way.
Yeah. I've expanded on the podcasting. I started Place Your Trades a year ago, and really even longer than that. And Place Your Trades, there's other podcasters in there. We've got a lot of cool stuff going on in there. We're going to be starting some challenges and contests and all sorts of fun different things over there, and really building a community more on the options side of things, still futures based. And there will be more to reveal as time goes by with Place Your Trades. And I started that because I look back at my career and I've seen so much. And I know that when I started my podcast, I was one of the only futures podcasters out there, and probably one of to this day. I don't know how many more there are. I don't think there's a ton of us out there, but there's definitely more nowadays. But, I've seen a lot. I understand the business, and I want other people to be able to share their information, like what you guys are doing, with your podcast. And I don't want to be on camera all the time. And I know that I could help other people and facilitate that. And so I looked at those types of businesses and say, let me move into that realm, because once again, it's in my backyard. It's markets, I understand the business. I know the people, the good people. And so I've expanded so much of that with Place Your Trades, and even with, Futures Radio, I continue to do that. And I continue to do Develop Your Edge. Those are the two shows that I do. And so, some are live, some are recorded, and I love it. And, and for me, it goes back to, I want to exist in this space beyond just trading, right? Because trading is who I am as a person. It's very personal. It's intimate. It's what I do. I've never really been a coach or any of that type of thing. It's not really of my interest, but I want to give more back to the community and be more in the community. And this is a great way for me to do that. I'm not somebody who's going to be, doing the mentorships or doing all that. I want to teach and do all that stuff through, my website and however, through my other podcasters. And I feel that's the path that I've chosen, and I really like it and I enjoy it. And so for me, it's another thing where, once again, it's just, it's my passion. It's become my passion. I think that the media space in this industry, to put it bluntly, sucks. I don't think they've ever covered futures and options well. And I'm hoping to change that, and I want to change that. So it's become a passion of mine to become better at that than what's out there. And so, everybody can talk about stocks. There's millions of people that do a great job on it. Macro, we do some of that, but futures and options on futures,
there's definitely a hole there. Yeah, there's definitely a hole in the space.
You get so many people come into this space that don't know anything about it, and just because they can open an account, they come in and they're gone as fast as they came in. And so I want to switch that. I want to change that.
I love that. When you are so focused on futures and you see, because we spoke before about all these, prop firms coming up and everything like that, have you seen that there's futures funding companies coming up and things like that? Is that going to be something we hear from you more on maybe in the future?
No, I don't see myself getting in that business. I'm really going to stay on the podcasting side. I'm going to create some fun things for traders to come in. I want to be the free community. Yeah. I want to be that aspect of it. I want to highlight what the good is in our community. I want people to come to us, and not have to pay anything and get content and learn stuff, and to highlight people that do have rooms and do fun people, because that's what they want to do. That's their businesses. And I get that. And I think there's a lot of bad stigma attached to like people that have trading rooms or all of this. Well, it's just because there's a lot of bad people that have bad rooms, but
there's no barrier to entry to be a coach. So anybody can do it. Mark Minaviri, who won the U.S. Investing Championship, has a room.
Yeah. And look at the people that, it's like, look at crypto.
Yeah.
You've got some great people in crypto.
Of course.
Got some really bad people in crypto.
The worst.
You got to know who you're dealing with. And for me, I look at it like there's so many people I know, you guys, Pax. There's just so many people I could think about. Brian Shannon does a video. These are guys I've known for many years. Anne-Marie, Cordova. There's so many people that I know. These are great people. And they're doing great things. And I want to highlight that. I want those people to be highlighted. And I want to be, the hub for that.
I love that. I love it. I love it all, Anthony. I really, really appreciate you. I appreciate your insight, your time. I think we are good for part 2. Definitely not done, though. I think we're going to have to continue the series with you coming on the show every once in a while. Maybe if we'll get you once a year, this will be good. But listen, Anthony, where can everybody get a hold of you? Yeah, it was a birthday gift to James. That's what it was.
Yeah. Anthony, happy birthday.
Where can everybody find you, Anthony? On Twitter? Where do you want us to send everybody?
Anthony Crudele on Twitter, anthonycrudele.com, and then placeyourtrades.com. Check that out. I've got a lot of cool stuff coming to Place Your Trades. I'm really excited about what I've got coming there. Stay tuned for that.
Good. Maybe that'll be our next podcast reason to get, some buzz around that. So that'll be good. But everybody, we appreciate your listeners. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you check out Anthony's links. I'll put them in the description. We appreciate you all very much. Again, Anthony, thank you for the time. James, thank you as well. And we'll see you guys in the next episode.
See ya.